If you guys know me and my writing process and the project that I've been working on a book that I am calling Project the Wall. It is a adult romantasy novel, and I have very much identified as a pantser personally. I went into this book with notes, yes, and some general ideas for the plot, but a lot of things have been discovered through the writing process. And that means that before draft 2, I have some serious world building, brainstorming work to do. I very much deferred that work to after my rough draft. I did a lot of discovery writing in the rough draft, figured out a lot of things along the way, but I really am going to need a pretty drastic organization, world building session before I head into draft 2 of this book. Now, we're not heading into draft 2 yet. I'm still writing the book, but given the fact that we are coming up on the final part, the book is broken into 3 parts, and probably the last 20,000 words of the manuscript or less, honestly, I want to get a little bit of a head start on the brainstorming, world building work that I have waiting for me after this first draft. I'm starting to really think about revision now and what I can do to set myself up for success for revision. So we're gonna kickstart that today. I'm going to create a world building web, which has been like my dream. Back in my NaNoWriMo planning video, I said this. Cue the footage. It doesn't look like I'm gonna be able to do a world building web, which I'm kind of bummed about because those look so fun. Maybe one day I'll get a software where I can do a world building web. Yeah, I was really craving a world building web, but did not have the software to do it. And that is where the sponsor of this video comes in. So I want to thank Scrintal for partnering with me on this video. Scrintal is basically a planning, brainstorming sort of software where you can bring structure to your creative ideas. And I've been an admirer of Scrintal from afar for quite some time. They've been on my list of brands that I would love to work with because I've seen lots of authors use their software and it just looks so fun. Basically, you get to create different cards and build out like an entire structure for planning whatever creative project. And I think this is going to be like super helpful to my process. So I'm so excited to get my hands in Scrintal and play around. We're going to go to the same bagel shop that we went to in my last writing vlog and get a little bagel, try to build a world building web. And then I'm going to show you guys how I'm building it, what it looks like, how you can create a world building web for your own project. If you do want to sign up for Scrintal, you can get 10% off with my discount code brielle10, or you can use the link down in the description to sign up and get that same 10% discount. Thank you again to Scrintal for sponsoring, and let's go ahead and get into the software, see what we can do, play around a little bit. Okay, we are back from the coffee shop and I want to show you guys the progress that I've made so far on the world building web for Project the Wall. So I want to show you guys how Scrintal kind of works because it's super freaking cool. So essentially it's kind of like a note card system, but virtually and very, very organized, where you have these categories. So for example, I built a characters section and then you can have links to different cards. So as you can see, characters is connected to all of our main characters as well as 2 locations. So for example, Ametrine is a specific city and I have its own section for the characters that we meet in Ametrine just to keep it a little bit more organized. But what's really cool about this is that you can create very complex webs with all of these links. So for example, if we take Varen, who's our love interest, he's obviously a central character and his family members are kind of offshoots of him. So we have his mother, his brothers, and then of course his father, who also is the ruler. Since the ruler is so critical to the story, I also have him directly connected to the characters card, but his mother and brothers only really matter in how they interact with him, affect him, so they're direct offshoots of him. So basically you can click on one of these cards and type as much as you want. You can also insert images, bulleted lists, task lists, quotes. So for example, if I was building out Rhea's page, who is our lead character, maybe I would put her age, which I think is 20. Still need to figure that out. For now, I'm just assuming she's the same age as Varen because her age has never been explicitly mentioned. And then what she wants. I actually want to double click into this whole what she wants thing because this is a piece of writing advice that I got. Game changer, love it. And that piece of advice is to have what the character wants be the core of what they do in the story. When we create character profiles, it's really easy to get caught up on the more surface level things, you know, their age, their eye color, their hair color. And those are the sorts of things that you often see in like a character profile template. But something that is often neglected is the more important internal stuff. Like, what is this character's values? What do they want out of their life or in this story? I'm really glad that this is something I figured out relatively early in the process. I don't think it's something I had nailed down before I started writing, but pretty early on, I think, into drafting, I asked myself, what do these lead characters want? Why are they doing what they're doing? And I'm a big believer in like letting your characters show and tell you who they are. So that's very much how I feel like I found these answers for my characters, was through the drafting process and seeing how they were behaving, what their circumstances were, and figuring out what is their driving force, what is the core of why they're doing what they're doing, why they're acting the way that they act. So I strongly recommend asking yourself that question about your characters if you haven't yet. I think it's critical and it can help you make a lot of decisions about what the character is going to do in the story, how they react, how they interact with the world. Like, it is really the core of everything. So for example, for my main characters, what Rhea really wants is a life that means something. And for Varen, what he wants is to impact the world around him. And I think it's also interesting to explore, how does what they want potentially sabotage them? What weaknesses does that create for them? So for example, because Varen is so set on impacting the world around him, he wants to affect things, he wants to make a difference. Sometimes this can lead him to be like impulsive or go into things without thinking or always feel like he needs to act even when it's not smart to. So we could put like consequences, impulsive, acts without thinking. That's the character section, and then I have a location section broken down into the two main continents. So Callahan, which is where they're from, Salaway, which is where they're going. Slight spoilers in this video, but nothing critical. Should throw that out there now. I'll show you guys how you would go about adding a new card too. So there's a character in Ametrine called Born who's friends with Alex and really only shows up with Alex, so we're gonna go ahead and add it as a direct offshoot. So we would add Born here. And then to change the view of the card so that you only see the title instead of all of the card's contents, you just go to toggle layout and then you can go ahead and drag this around wherever you want, and the arrow will automatically adjust. We're gonna continue working on this. Seeing it laid out in this very visual format is so satisfying and going to be so much more organized than anything I could have done just in my notes. So feeling very good about it, and I think I'm actually going to hit up a coffee shop with a friend soon. Hi guys, it is several days later and I want to do one final check-in in this video to show you kind of where I've landed, where my brainstorming process is currently sitting, as well as my plans for how I'm going to use this system when I go into revision. So my future plans to continue using this world building web that we've started in this video. And I wanted to chat a little bit more about some of my strategy behind characters and how I'm going to flesh out locations and the magic system and stuff. This is something that I'm going to continue to work on as I continue working on the project, and something that's really going to have a heavy hand in my revising process. We're really just getting it started today and kicking it off, and I very much am planning to update you guys as I continue to work with this. So I did quite a bit of expanding on the locations section of things, and I took quite a bit of inspiration from Lynn D. Jung's series on fantasy world building, which I strongly recommend those videos. I think I'm going to go back and deep dive into them when it comes time for me to do my revising prep, but I really love how that video inspired certain questions for me in terms of things to ask myself about the magic system and the way that this world works. So we have things like the government, the religion, and then breakdowns into the cities, including specific locations within the city of Garnet. And this religion piece is something that Lynn really inspired, because in the book there's like subtle mentions to sort of like a mythology type system. Like they refer to the gods, so it's alluded to that in this world there's like multiple gods. It's also kind of briefly mentioned in passing that people don't really take religion very seriously anymore in this society. There's a time when one of the characters mutters a prayer and she comments on the fact that she can't remember the last time she heard someone do that. So there's little mentions, right? But it's not by any means something I've fleshed out. Thinking a little bit more about religion's role in society was something that Lynn really inspired with her video, so it's something I want to dive further into. It doesn't need to be extensive because religion really does not play a huge role in the magic system or in this world, but I do think it would be interesting to explore how religion relates to just like these characters' worldview and also the like sort of hopelessness that has overtaken the country, and how does that look different in a place like Stalloway, which isn't under the ruler's control. So just some things that I'm starting to think about. Speaking of things that were inspired by Lynn's video, I also really want to explore the risks and limitations of the magic system. This is something that I'm going to dive into more once I've finished drafting. One of the things that Lynn mentioned in her latest world building video was the importance of knowing the boundaries of your magic system, aka are there risks, are there rules, are there certain limitations to what you can and cannot do with the magic. And because my magic system was something that I Discovery wrote, I think it's super important for me to think about this, because I have a very soft magic system, which is a term that I learned from Lynn as well, which basically means that there isn't a bunch of strict rules. It's not something that you necessarily study in this world. It's kind of intuitive, it's very emotional and a little bit spiritual. Sorry if you can hear the obnoxious dog that's barking, but magic in my world is a little bit more of a spiritual thing. It's a little bit less strict rules, something you can study. But because of that, I think it's important that I still think about what are the limits here, because I don't want magic to seem like magic can get us out of every pinch, out of every situation so easily. There need to be rules. And something I really want to play with is the idea of sacrifices. When you do really powerful magic, you get punished for it in some way. And I've already mentioned in a previous video that I want to have the concept of your magic can rebel against you. It can refuse to work with you, which I think can also play interestingly as a limitation, specifically in book 2. So these are all things that I really want to explore when I do the rest of this world building exercise. For the character profiles, I started asking myself some more questions and kind of built a formula that I really like, which includes the age and what they want, as I mentioned in the last update, but also is going to include a quote, notable physical features, so any hyper-specific descriptions that I want to keep in mind, some personality traits if it's applicable. I don't think a list of personality traits is always the most usable or concrete. Sometimes it can feel a little bit reductive, so I'm not attached to necessarily including that. Values, if I want to include them, internal conflicts, and then facts, which I'm really just going to use as a dumping ground for anything that's been mentioned about the character that I feel like I need to remember. I feel like a better example of this would be her sister Margot. So it's kind of cool. Down here you can go directly to the characters that she's linked to. And I also did this tag thing where I tagged main characters, secondary characters, and side characters. We'll get into that in a second. But if we take a look at Margot, hers is much more filled out. So Margot is Rhea's younger sister, and we have a fun little quote here. I want to include a quote that I think really summarizes who the character is, or a line from them that I really like. In this case, it's a line about Margot, since we don't see a lot of interactions with her. She doesn't have any like hard-hitting dialogue, so I really liked this just because it's a great summary of who she is as a character. In this case, because she is a little bit more of a side character, I did find it valuable to list some personality traits: creative, intelligent, driven, unapologetic. And then I have these random facts like what year of school is she in? She's working on college applications, what she does with her free time, like random things that were just mentioned about her in early chapters. I created a list of each of the types of characters. So we have the main characters, which is our main character and our love interest, secondary characters, anyone who's sort of central but not the main two, and then side characters. And I really love this because then obviously you can go to any of these pages directly, click on a character, click the corresponding page, and it will open their own little character profile. So my philosophy with character profiles going forward is really going to be focus on keeping track of the specific facts that I need to desperately keep track of, things that are essential in their history that I don't want to mess up, especially when I do end up writing the second book, because I am planning to make this a duology. That's the priority. And then having those key core things that can get to the root of who that character is. For example, what do they want? That's the main focus. And these other prompts like personality traits, physical features, I'm not going to worry about too much. If it comes up naturally like it did for Margot, Rhea's sister, I'll write those things in, but by no means does it need to be a one size fits all for every character. And I'm also not going to force those things because I'm a big believer that with all brainstorming world building tactics, it's only useful to the extent that it actually helps you with the project. So to talk a little bit more about how I plan to use this in revision. So my plan when I finish drafting this book, which I think is going to happen hopefully at the end of April, is to do a read through. And I think I might actually do several read throughs. I'm going to get the book printed in a physical form, binded physical form, which is going to be so cool to see my book in that physical, tangible way. But then I'm going to do a read through. And I think first maybe I'll just do a read through whole book just for vibes, just to see how the story's feeling. And then I want to do a deep dive read through where I'm making notes on the project. I'm scribbling little notes into the margins, but also where I'm writing down every bit of information that I've written somewhere in the book. If at one point I said the restrictions were put into place when Varen was 15 years old, I need to write that down. Like I need to write down all of those miscellaneous details. And then my hope is that I can dump those into these cards and essentially try to rectify in case I have conflicting information or if certain things don't add up because of something I decided later about the world. I need to know all of that. So anything that's like a fact about the world or a specific character that I need to make sure I have straight, I want to write down during that read through. This was super fun. I can totally see myself doing this at the beginning of starting a project, continuing to use this sort of method because I love how clear and visual it is and how well organized it is. So I want to thank Scrintal again for sponsoring this video. Once again, you can use my code brielle10 for 10% off of Scrintal's membership, and I will have that link down in the description as well. So thank you guys for hanging out with me in this video. If you made it all the way to the end, comment a pencil emoji down in the comments, and I will see you guys next week with a new installment of the Rough Draft Vlogs series. We're going to be writing 5,000 words hopefully in the next vlog, so I'm really excited for that one. And then we're going to head into Camp Nano pretty soon. So if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. I post lots of writing content, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.